Welcome to the channel, I'm Tamanon, and I've been watching seasonal anime for way too long now, and recently thought, hey, why not talk about them since very few get remembered after one season? So, to wrap up the season, I'll be talking about 9 shows I watched during this fall 2024 season. I'm going to try to stay away from continuing shows as well as movies, as it kind of defeats the purpose of me watching seasonal slop. And obviously there are going to be some mild spoilers, so if that bothers you, go ahead and watch the season, then get back here and argue with me about my choices. On the first slot in the 3x3 for fall 2024 is Dandadan. Most have probably heard, watched, or read this by now, and I don't blame you. I've been a fan of the manga for some time, and when I read that Science Saru would be behind it, I was instantly hyped. However, after the abysmal adaptation to Chainsaw Man, and the initial hype there, I kinda held my emotions despite being an avid fan of Science Saru and the source material. That was until seeing episode 1 at Anime Expo and listening to the director gush. This dude loves the manga, loves animation, and loves directing. The voice actors even went as far as to call him a director otaku, which is clear watching the anime adaptation. It is truly a standout and will clearly be going on for some time. As long as the manga holds its charm and the director's willpower remains, Dandadan will easily be a classic in its own right. If somehow you've missed every spoiler for the show, let me go ahead and explain Dandadan as if it were an isekai title. I was a loser into aliens and I met a punk girl into ghosts, but my balls were stolen by a ghost, so I became the Flash, and she was pro by aliens and got telepathy, and now we have a talking cat. Too long read later, it's Zoomy Twilight. And on romance, we have a slew of spaces that are going to be taking up the 9x9 that are full of shoujo, josei, and basically shows aimed at women that I really enjoyed. Acro Trip is PG gushing over magical girls. It follows Date Chizuko as she becomes a villain in order to be closer to her beloved magical strawberry, Berry Blossom. This was one of my favorite slapsticks of the week, and the male villain lead, Chroma, with his bizarro Kuma Kaijin mascot bears, really sold the show. It's lighthearted and silly with just the right doses of seriousness when needed, and I hope it gets another season down the line, but even if it doesn't, it's worth watching. Speaking of slapstick shows not in my demographic target, is How I Attended a All Guys Mixer. A light spoiler is in the name itself. It's about 3 dudes who go to a mixer, that is a traditional way men and women group date, and discover not 3 other women, but 3 other dudes there. And these 3 other dudes are hot, way hotter than the 3 that showed up. At this point you might be thinking, oh yowie, and you're wrong. All 3 are actually beautiful women who work at a drag bar dressed as men who pretend to be in yaois together. I wasn't expecting to enjoy this one as much as I did, but a lot of it has to do with one of the pairings in particular. See, there's 3 pairings in the show. The one that I really liked is Asagi and Fuji. Asagi is the Labrador dog trope dude who is naive, innocent, a little baka. Fuji is the cold, dare type who also draws hardcore yaoi smut for Comic Head. Their interactions were the best of the couples, while personally I couldn't stand any moment with a character named Hagi, but again, I'm not really the target audience here, and looking at how insanely popular the source material for this anime is, it already has a live action version. I'm sorry to any pro Hagi viewers. This was definitely worth watching weekly, although if you're watching post-season, feel free to skip the Hagi episodes. On dysfunctional rom-coms, there is a lead show for that. Yakuza Fiancé, Rise wa Tanin ga Lee, about the princess of Osaka Yakuza being paired with the prince of Tokyo's Yakuza. Based on a manga, and from the very first view of the OP, you'll see it's a bit edgier than your typical anime school rom-com. The main dudes are straight psychopaths that would make a middle schooler's self-insert OC on DeviantArt look sane. The main girl goes from clueless princess to Yakuza grandpa in a flash, and it tends to be very over the top. I'm sure this isn't anything new for this genre, but as it don't really tip my toes into it often, it was all fairly unique for a seasonal show to me. It feels kind of like Romeo and Juliet, but with a modern day Yakuza spin on it, and I'm all for it. Not sure what it is about psychopath male leads and female geared anime, but this season we have a not so holy trilogy of groomer anime. You'll see what I mean in a bit, so stay with me. Nina the Starry Bride is about how a blue-eyed orphan Nina in a fantasy Middle East is sold into slavery at a young age in order to pretend to be a priestess that had died. She gets raised by a tall, dark, and handsome second Princess with a cold demeanor and dead-eyed gaze in order to take the part of the dead priestess, because they look similar. Of course, these two fall in love, and he stops treating her like a slave, yada yada. Anyway, she gets sold into a neighboring kingdom that's fantasy Europe to wed a white-haired psychopath named Set, who is introduced to us, the audience, by bending 3 unwilling captive priestesses and then shooting one of them. But he ends up a nice guy and even gives Nina a baby tiger. I mean, he did kill its mother first, so it's all, but anyway, it's all good. He had a rough childhood. And anyway, if you like low to no fantasy magic settings with Genki MC, who melts psychopath's heart while causing massive wars and upheaval, killing thousands, then this is the grooming show of the season for you. Into your daughter wife being a bit more smug and the male lead a bit less Satan, Rekishi, or I'll Become a Villainess Who Goes Down in History, is for you. This time it's a high fantasy isekai and very typical flavor for villainous stories about being reincarnated as the villain noble and being pitted against the saint commoner who was the MC of the game you were isekai'd into. Personally, I love the tropes in villainous stories. I've watched every villainous show that has been put out seasonally since they started getting big a few years back, I think around Bakurina time. I won't tell you this one has much special going on. The MC Alicia, she's a baka, but what sets her apart is the chunniness she puts out. I mean, look at her, she has an eye patch. Super chunny, darkness powers, wants to be the best villainess ever. And not she, nor the other characters, or even the audience really knows what the heck she means by this. Lots of cute moments where the prince named Duke, yes, the king is to be named Duke, not sure either, he snaps his fingers for lolly delivery service and she disappears. The main antagonist / protagonist, St. Liz's power play a very interesting role. And if you're into these sort of isekai villainous stories, I say give it a chance, it's certainly fun. You like your daughter wife to be more like a wife husband, and your male lead to be a kawaii and innocent with a dark past, like time loops and high fantasy but real sick of isekai? The do-over damsel conquers the dragon emperor was joked as the 3rd best groomer anime of the season, but for me, it was number 1. Okay, maybe not the best way to put that, but it was certainly my favorite of the Triad. The MC Jill reminds me a lot of what Tanya from Yojo Senki would seem like if you didn't know the truth going on about that character's isekai. Jill is headstrong, determined, smart, capable, and ruthless when need be. The series starts with her dying after discovering the awful truth about the prince she was set to marry, and finding herself going back in time a few years to when the betrothal first took place. She, of course, not wanting to die, makes some rash decisions and ends up engaged to the Empire Next Door's cursed dragon emperor. Hottest rave. The series is high fantasy with a surprisingly engaged political backdrop of factions within Rave's empire, long lore-filled backdrops that actually matter, and some surprisingly nice action scenes for what the show is. Jill is cute, Hottest is cute, and genuinely it's been a fun ride. When some of the lore bits slot into place and you realize why Hottest is how he is, there's a very nice aha moment. Another one I hope that has a season 2 or at least a light novel adaptation. That's in English, because I know it already has one, because it is the adaptation from the light novel. Anyway, the last 2 slots in fall 2024 seasonal 3x3 go to 2 very contrasting shows. Trillion Game is one going in where I wasn't sure how I felt. Personally, it took a bit to get used to the character designs, but after a while, I've grown to like them and their charm, even if I still can't stand how Kirika looks, but that's mostly due to her style choices. It's an adaptation of a manga by the same name, and I 100% will be reading it now. Trillion Game is about 2 friends, Chad and Virgin, doing whatever they need to do to become the world's first trillionaires. Yes, trillionaires, and that's why it's called Trillion Game. Anyway, watching their ups and downs and scams and plays each week and seeing bits of the puzzle fall into place was excellent. It's like Silicon Valley had a Death Note adaptation, and I highly recommend it. The final slot could go to any of the 60 shows this season. A lot of them that people will probably be in the comments and be like, oh, why don't you talk about Orb or whatever. But anyway, for me, it is Puniru is a kawaii slime. Starting with the obvious, this is a kid's show. A very silly, nonsensical, gag, slapstick comedy about a non-human slime, Puniru, trying really hard to be cute to her accidental creator, Kotaru. When Kotaru was younger, Puniru showed up as things like a cute penguin, etc. But now that he's older, she tries to getting his praise by being a cute girl instead. Hijinks ensue. It's over the top, she transforms into variations from older her to dragon, using a long magical girl-esque transformation sequence involving a gashapon machine. There is a lot of stupidly drawn silly faces and screaming, and it won't be for everyone, but this slime was made for me. Thank you for watching all the way through. I hope to put out something like this each post-season moving forwards. If you like card games, anime, the Japans, please give me, Talmanon, a follow, like, all that, blah 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 blah.